Airbags, supplemental restraint systems, supplemental inflatable restraint systems, SRS or SIR. And really, this is just to promote protection for the front seat and rear seat occupants in addition to the three-point belts. In addition to the three-point belts. Uh, we got to talk about crush zones, crumple zones. It's been a motor vehicle standard for many, many years. As a matter of fact, Mercedes is the one who developed it, and they just let this, all their testing and the studies, they let it out into the world for everybody to use. So this was based on Mercedes technology, and we wanted to be able to you know, uh, uh, have these crumple zones to slow the impact down. And this was to protect the passengers and sacrifice the vehicle. I mean, if it came down to protecting the passengers or protecting the vehicle, they protected the passengers, which that seems like a good idea. The other things they protected was also the gas tank, since they didn't want, flaming wreckage, as well as the accident. And these crumple zones were built into the front of the vehicle and into the rear of the vehicle. So if it got rear-ended, it would accordion, and it would allow people to ride down the crash. Now, this guy Bella, whatever his name is, and he spent most of his time working there, and it was 2,500 patents approximately, and they were issued in 1952, and they gave it out to the world, which I thought was pretty nice of them. So what are these crush zones? Well, it's basically engineered places of failure, weak points, to allow the engineers to decide where the car would crumple, where it would get distorted, rather than, just guessing. So they built these crash points in these crumple zones, and this is kind of how they look. On impact, they accordion up, which helps them ride down the crash. I'm going to post these two links. These are some pretty good airbag crash test dummies. You'll see, it's fun. Belts. This is the active part. You have to put on your belt, and basically what that does is that makes it so you don't move far in an accident. The belt holds you back from impacting the dashboard. But so this was our first line of defense from hitting the interior or being ejected ejected from the vehicle. Now, again, it allows you to ride down the crash, and what that means is it allows you some time to slow down. Because we have literally, there's multiple impacts that happen in an accident. There's the car hitting the other car or the wall, and then you're still traveling at 60 or 80 miles an hour, which causes you to crash again inside the car. Ask me one of these days. I'll love to go into great detail about this kind of stuff because I do find it interesting. So these airbags were designed to help ride down the crash even more. We inflate this giant pillow in front of somebody, and it just gives them a softer landing spot rather than hard steering wheel or the hard dashboard. We also have side and roof rails bags now that come down and block the window so you don't hit your head on the window or have be ejected from the vehicle. Some of these things are quite large too. So we got a bunch of parts. The stuff you would expect: driver's side, passenger side airbags. We got an initiator, a squib it's called, crash sensors, left and right hand. We also have what's called a saffing sensor. Some people call it a staffing sensor, which it's a saffing sensor. I think that's how you say it. And this is the arming for the airbag system. And then we have a left and right crash sensor. And we also have in case it's a severe accident and the battery becomes disconnected, we have reserve power module, usually some capacitors inside the control module to have enough juice to inflate the bags if the battery becomes disconnected in an accident. We also have the belt buckle switch that allows the airbag to know whether or not you have your belt buckled. I mean, you get into an accident, the airbag may not go off if you don't have your belt buckled. It also, the airbag won't go off if the crash is, you know, off axis, if it's coming from like, the corners or something, it may not inflate the bag because, it wants you to hit the bag just dead straight on rather than roll off to one side or the other. Then we also have the clock spring, which is inside the steering wheel, and that allows you to turn the wheel and still maintain contact with, the airbag still maintains contact with the airbag initiator module. And then we also have, the airbag light, and then some of the new ones, we have this PPS, the passenger presence system, to allow the computer to know how big you are. We also have multiple stage airbags now. They have, stage one, stage two, some are three-stage airbags, and it can just deploy them in sequence or, like 1, 3, and 2, or, just, it's not a very big person, so it just deploys the first, the lowest setting. Uh, Anyways, they can get quite complicated, and realize this all has to take place in literally the blink of an eye. It has to make a decision over whether or not, to deploy the airbag or not deploy the airbag faster than you can think. So these guys are incredibly fast. Uh, Okay, so we'll look at the airbags themselves. They have an initiator, or a squib, it's called, and this is a small electronic, explosive device. We blow that off, and it blows off a bigger charge to actually, inflate the airbag. We also have some, stuff that's inside the airbag. Think like a powder, like a cornstarch or a flour based. A lot of times it's cornstarch that is used to give it some mass when it expands to help expand the bag faster. All right, so we got this readiness. It's, just you're driving along, you're doing your job, and you get into an accident. Well, it deploys, and then the restraint part is where you hit the bag, and then usually, you're going to bounce back off the bag quite fast, and then they want the bag to be out of the way as quickly as possible, so that you can exit the vehicle, or the fire department can extricate you. So we look inside, and we have some, there's a big metal housing on the back, and then the airbag is all folded up inside there. When we blow this off, it blows through the covering. We'll talk about that later when I R&R an airbag for you. It blows through the covering, and that's what inflates the bag. So here's a two-stage one. So you can see that stage one has a whole lot more explosives behind it. Stage two is a smaller deployment, and we can use these together. So the takeaway from this is, even though an airbag has deployed, it may still go off again. You understand what I mean? I mean, just because it's gone off doesn't mean it's 100% safe. And we'll talk about safety later. Anyway, so deployment. It requires a significant, sufficient force in order to deploy the airbag. And also, it needs to occur in the front of the vehicle. And people look at their cars after an accident, and they're like, "Oh, look at how much damage is done, and the airbag didn't go off." Well, I look at it and I see it's off to the side. It's coming in at an angle. Well, the airbag, if it deployed at that point, it could cause more damage to the people inside. So, you know what I'm saying? Some of these guys will deploy all the airbags. Like if, it sees you becoming airborne, and, the G sensors in there pick up like a tumble, it'll set off the side airbags. We also get into, when we get into these side airbags, like the driver's side door airbag, that driver's side curtain, you have, so if there's an accident in the front of the vehicle, you have some room, and there's some time lapse before the impact hits the passenger compartment from the crumple zones. There's a lot less crumple zones in the door next to you, so they have to deploy a whole lot faster. So they're putting airbag control modules in the door just because there's not enough time for the electricity to come from the central control module for the airbag all the way to the side of the car to inflate the airbag in a side impact collision or a rollover. G sensors pick this up again and sees the car start to roll side to side. It's going to deploy both front side curtain airbags. As long as there's a passenger in the seat and the passenger presence system picks it up. Get it? So if there's nobody there, it's not going to pick it up. Now, so we protect during, I covered this, left and right deploy independently, yada, yada, yada. Crash sensors. Typical types, we have these saffing sensors. This confirms the crash. So this is like the arming sensor, sometimes they call it. So this one needs to close, and then at in a specific window of time, one or both or multiple crash sensors need to deploy as well. They need to close or they need to signal an accident. There's a couple of different types of crash sensors, and we'll talk about them. Some are reusable. That means in an accident, as long as they're not physically damaged, they can just be used again. Some crash sensors or saffing sensors are one use only. You get into an accident, they have to be replaced. Much like the airbag, once you blow up the balloon, it's got to get another one. We okay with this? So usually it's 2 or more sensors, one staffing and one front, must be activated to inflate the airbag module. And it has a certain window of opportunity to happen. So airbags monitor vehicle speed. Okay, they monitor, G forces. They also, some of them even monitor like steering wheel angle sensors to know that, oh my God, crank the wheel. It knows that you're turning the wheel and you're probably going to end up sideways. They're incredibly sophisticated. Okay, take a break here.